I know it's higher than the principal, and it came from above. And it is wrong and not correct, and people need to know what's going on, because it is not right. It is outrageous, outrageous. And this policy that we're talking about right now, and I hope we can jump ahead to it because it relates, is the controversial issues policy. And this is directly from my lesson plan. And it is. And when it says controversial issues can relate to sensitive personal subjects, widely debated scientific theories, right there, that is directly from this whole situation, okay? And who determines who's controversial? Why is this language in here? Why do we need this at a time that we're talking about our budgets are so low, and what we're doing here is deterring volunteers for coming in and helping to enrich our students? That's what we're doing here. We are deterring volunteer, we are deterring enrichment programs at a time that we need that most. My God, how could that be happening? It doesn't make sense.
Ms. Johnson, may I answer?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. For those of you who do not know what's going on, I'm only going to devote a certain amount of time because I spend time on policies here and curriculum that from a central level. But several accusations have been levied at me, and I want to respond to it. And I will tell you that I did receive a call a couple of months ago from a parent who was concerned about an environmental lesson that was going to be given to her child. She was not in agreement with it. And I said to the superintendent, there were concerns, I said to the superintendent, how do we organize supplemental material? The person who called me thought that the person who was delivering the material was a Fulton County personnel, paid personnel. I didn't know one way or the other. I asked the principal, and he told me that it was a volunteer in the school. And so I asked the superintendent, how do you handle this? What do you do? And she said, well, that should be covered under supplemental materials policy. And I said, okay. She goes, maybe we need to review it. I said, that's a good idea. And so she starts looking for a supplemental materials policy. We don't have one. So,
There was a policy in place.
please,
There was a policy in place.
can you let me finish here?
But
So
just
superintendent,
keep the
are you going to let me
facts
finish?
straight. Keep the facts straight.
I have them straight. And the superintendent said to me, there's not a supplemental materials policy. I can't believe you don't have one. So she asked her staff to start working on one. And the staff came forward with the controversial materials policy because we don't have a supplemental materials policy. And that's what we've been discussing. Anytime a parent is upset about something, even if it's one parent, it's enough to ask a question, and I'll ask a question about it. And to be honest with you, we don't have any policy in place currently that makes supplemental materials as transparent as the materials that come from central administration. I don't think that's right. I think that everything should be transparent. I think that anything that's delivered to our students should have the same transparency that material delivered by Fulton County Schools does.
Because it goes to everybody's kids. I mean,
But that's not what it says.
Okay, I'm not going to let this get into a shouting match today because this is about policy. I asked, there was a concern, and I went to my superintendent and asked if there was a policy related to it. There wasn't, and we're handling it through policy. Our policy development is very open and transparent. Anybody who has any concerns, questions, suggestion for language, or anything will have at least 2 months to participate in that discussion. I would say that the volunteer policy is going to be very flavored by the email by Sally Hildebrand. She had 15 or 20 questions, and she said, hey, these are good questions. And we're changing what we're doing because we don't have good answers to them. This policy on supplemental materials is probably going to be on for a couple of months so that everybody will have an opportunity to look at things. So, I mean, I think I'm a little disconcerted by accusations that I inserted myself in places that I don't belong, because I didn't. I'm addressing this on a policy issue, And I understand that you're very upset. And I'm very sorry that you're very upset. But we are dealing with it on a policy issue.
But there is a
And Ms.
policy crossed out
Johnson,
right here.
I did respond to the 3-page email that you sent me. I sent you my home number and I sent you my cell phone number.
But you
And I asked you to call me.
And you had
didn't.
already canceled
And you
those
didn't.
things.
I did not cancel anything. I didn't cancel my cell phone
Okay,
number.
somebody
I didn't cancel
canceled that
material.
without-
I did not cancel anything. Not in my purview, not something I do. I did not cancel anything. I went to my superintendent and addressed it on a policy basis.
So it was, it just, I don't know if this is important, but just to understand, the parent who called you that was concerned initially, it was the content, not the fact that a parent volunteered.
I think there was a couple of issues. There was issues of not being able to view it ahead of time, not be able to see the content ahead of time, and concern about the content. So there was concern both ways. And one of the reasons that it was about, it was some environmental issues that are, by many in this day and age, seen as controversial. And we did have a policy on controversial material. We are going to be reviewing it, and I think that's right. You know, I do have concerns that parent volunteers would get put in positions to present controversial material. I mean, I do. I mean, maybe everybody doesn't agree with me. You've had your hand up forever. You have.
But just want to make sure, Ira Weinstein, I'm involved in the foundation, and my kids are Birmingham Falls. This green issue, correct me if I'm wrong, the agenda was reviewed by a committee at the school, correct?
By the CST.
It was reviewed by superintendent? I mean, I'm not in the middle of all the
They
details.
can't do that. They don't get to do
Wait,
that.
wait,
They
wait.
don't get to determine what materials are put in front of students. I mean, to those of us who come to these meetings all the time and do this, we watch the working board session, we watch the board session, we come to these meetings. All the materials that go in front of all the kids in all of Fulton County schools go through a process. And it's a review process where parents go down to the central office, they look at whether it's a math book or a science book or whatever. And, you know, it's got to run the gauntlet. I would, it's not my school, and I hear you, I've been a PTA president for years. I was on a board in an elementary school for 5 years. I would have a concern as a parent with a parent standing up and giving a lesson plan.
Do you
We
agree
go
with the
through-
science lab?
we
Do
go-
you think science lab should be gone then? 'Cause
Yeah, but
that's
the
exactly
science
how
labs
it's
are
The science
teaching
lab-
what's in the Fulton
it's-
County and State of Georgia curriculum.
It's the curriculum.
So is this lesson plan where aligned with curriculum standards written by our
Can I-
CST? This went through the CST. This is not just me. This went through our CST. She approved it. She put down all the standards that it related to. This wasn't something that I dreamed up and just gave it to the kids. It went through the CST. It was related to the standards, and yet it was still canceled. So it was not just
It
something.
actually
that-
I
has
also
more
have to
scrutiny than
say-
the science lab.
It has much more scrutiny than the science lab.
I
because
also have
that
to say,
doesn't go
as a
through anything.
volunteer, I do think this inflammatory behavior is going to be the kind of thing that makes the school system have to say, we just need to have teachers teaching,
Yeah.
and parents may only volunteer in the
Yes.
capacity of
I just wanna make
stuffing
sure that
folders and supporting teachers without contact to students.
I just want to make sure that them marking this out, this volunteer piece, isn't that first step, because that's what I read this as.
First of all, I didn't ask for the volunteer policy to come forward. And second of
I know
all,
you didn't.
staff is the one that presented that recommendation. I'm happy to take back that y'all think that's a bad idea. That's not an
Even
issue.
if it's for
And
morale
somebody's
issues.
somebody's
Don't put
attached these two issues, and I can, y'all feel they're attached. They're not. I mean, they're not.